Hmm? Just as I saw Ephraim like Tyre, planted in a pleasant place, so Ephraim will bring out his children to the murderer? Huh. Give them, O Lord. What will you give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. Wow. This is a prophet of God, and he's calling upon God to curse his people. He is calling upon his God to destroy his people. I'm confused. Tell you what, get out your Bible. Maybe join me in a cup of coffee. And let's look at this together in today's Bible class.
Give me the Bible, holy message shining. Thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day.
Our scripture reading begins with the first verse of Hosea chapter 9. Do not rejoice, O Israel, with joy like other peoples, for you have played the harlot against your God. You have made love for hire on every threshing floor. The threshing floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail in her. They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and shall eat unclean things in Assyria. They shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord, nor shall their sacrifices be pleasing to him. It shall be like bread of mourners to them. All who eat it shall be defiled. For their bread shall be for their own life. It shall not come into the house of the Lord. What will you do in the appointed day and in the day of the feast of the Lord? For indeed they are gone because of destruction. Egypt shall gather them up. Memphis shall bury them. Nettles shall possess their valuables of silver. Thorns shall be in their tents. The days of punishment have come. The days of recompense have come. Israel knows. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is insane because of the greatness of your iniquity and great enmity. The watchman of Ephraim is with my God, but the prophet is a fowler snare in all his ways, enmity in the house of his God. They are deeply corrupted, as in the days of Gibeah. He will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruits on the fig tree in its first season. But they went to Baal Peor and separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing they loved. As for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird. No birth, no pregnancy, and no conception. Though they bring up their children, yet I will bereave them to the last man. Yes, woe to them when I depart from them. Just as I saw Ephraim like Tyre, planted in a pleasant place, so Ephraim will bring out his children to the murderer. Give them, O Lord, what will you give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. All their wickedness is in Gilgal, for there I hated them. Because of the evil of their deeds, I will drive them from my house. I will love them no more. All their princes are rebellious. Ephraim is stricken, their root is dried up. They shall bear no fruit. Yes, were they to bear children, I would kill the darlings of their womb. My God will cast them away because they did not obey him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. The Book of Hosea, chapter 9, verses 1 through 17. May God bless the reading of his word.
We've come quite a ways in this study of the book of Hosea. The first 3 chapters, we looked at the example of Hosea, his wife Gomer, how it was that their relationship so clearly mirrored so clearly reflected and illustrated the relationship that God had with his unfaithful people, Israel. Chapter 4, we noticed God's accusations against his people. He accuses them of spiritual adultery, of idolatry, and of not teaching or learning his ways, not presenting them to those around them. Chapter 5, God gives them a warning. There's going to come a time. They've abandoned him. There's going to come a time when they come looking for him, and they're not going to be able to find him because he will have withdrawn himself from them. Because of this, in chapter 6, we read of Hosea's earnest plea that we need to return to God now. Let's seek his mercy while he is available. Let's not wait until disaster strikes and then seek after a God who has abandoned us as we have abandoned him. In chapter 7, we read God's lament that every attempt that he had made up until this time to bring his people to repentance had resulted only in uncovering deeper and more pervasive sin on their part. In chapter 8, we notice God's increasing anger at the sin of his people. And now as we come to chapter 9, God expounds on their coming sorrow and on their coming judgment. It begins quite plainly in verse 1 of chapter 9, where God tells them, "Do not rejoice, O Israel, with joy like other peoples." You know, in reading that, in that contrast, don't you joy like other people rejoice? I couldn't help but be reminded of something in the New Testament, something that's found in the book of 1 Thessalonians. It was written by the Apostle Paul to the church at Thessalonica. And this particular section seems to address a concern that they had about faithful Christians who had passed away. It seems that they were worried that those who died before Christ returned would miss the rewards of heaven. They would miss the promised blessings that would be given to the faithful children of God. And so Paul writes to them, this is chapter 4, verse 13, and he says here, "But I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep." Fallen asleep here is just a softer way of saying those who have died. The reason that I don't want you to be ignorant about it, well, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. The faithful child of God, when they die, that doesn't cut them off from hope. The hope of the Christian goes beyond the veil of death. Death does not separate us from our God, nor does it separate us from the promises or the blessings he has given. So yes, there will be sorrow, but not sorrow like the world knows, because the world knows that that is a separation that is forever. But for the faithful child of God, there's no need to sorrow. We will sorrow in our loss. We will sorrow in that brief separation. We'll sorrow for the hole that's been left in our lives. But it's a different hope. It's a different sorrow. For it is surrounded by hope, and it lays in the shadow of victory. But just as Paul tells the Thessalonians, don't you sorrow like others sorrow, Hosea would say to the people of God, don't you rejoice, O Israel, with joy like other peoples. You have no reason to rejoice. You have no reason to be happy because you have played the harlot against your God. Just as Gomer was unfaithful to Hosea, you have been unfaithful to your God. Matter of fact, he goes on to say that you have made love for hire on every threshing floor. They took every opportunity to blatantly, to openly display their unfaithfulness, to display, to put on show for the world to see their desire to be like the world around them and to accept the gods, the morals, and the practices of the heathen world. Well, just as Gomer found out, remember we covered that in chapter 3, Gomer's prostitution, her unfaithfulness, led her to a point of destitution. It led her to a point that Hosea had to buy her back. He had to purchase her. Apparently she had been reduced to slavery. Sin, in the long run, it never brings prosperity. It always brings disaster. It always brings poverty, if not in this world, then definitely in the world that is to come. And so God here in verse 2 would tell them that the threshing floor and the winepress shall not feed them. You're going to be in the same situation that Gomer was in. You're going to be destitute. You are going to be without. The threshing floor, the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail in her. There's no success. There's no prosperity. There is no security in sin. That can only be found in faithful obedience to the God of heaven. Verse 3, then he goes on to say, they shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and they shall eat unclean things in Assyria. Now, for some people, that reference to Egypt has confused them that they would return to Egypt, because history tells us, and tells us quite plainly, that it's the nation of Assyria who will conquer that northern kingdom of Israel, will take them away into captivity. Well, it's not that difficult a thing to see, and the Bible is always accurate, even in the most minute of details. The map that you see here represents the larger, darker green area, represents the borders of the kingdom of Assyria, approximately as they were during the time of Hosea. The arrow now points out the approximate location of the capital city of Samaria, the city that was the capital of that northern kingdom of Israel. And down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, the paler green, that's the borders of Egypt. A still powerful country, fading, but still powerful at this time. And as you see, the nation of Israel is caught right between them. Perhaps when Assyria comes south, perhaps when they begin to conquer, it is possible that some may try to take to sea and head out across the Mediterranean. Others may go the other way and try to head out across the Arabian desert. But both of those, without adequate preparation, without adequate resources, that's probably a poor choice and most likely a fatal choice. Most likely, they would first flee down to the southern kingdom of Judah, but you will remember under Tiglath-Pileser, the cities of Judah were also being conquered. It was not until he came against the city of Jerusalem itself that God intervened and sent him fleeing back to his own nation. Now, as they begin to flee, and as they keep fleeing, they're going to flee down to Egypt. Those who do escape away from that northern kingdom will find themselves back within the borders, back under the oversight, back as possessions of the land of Egypt. Now, some would say, look, all we've got to do is we'll just make a few token offerings. We'll pay a few token tithes, and then God will be pleased with us. We won't have to actually truly repent. Well, God knows better than that. Verse 4, they shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord. And even if they were, the latter part of verse 4 says, nor shall their sacrifices be pleasing unto him. Well, why not? I mean, he wants the sacrifices. If we make the wine offerings, if we make the sacrifices, surely that will square things up. We'll be right with God. Isn't it interesting how people think that way? Even today, there are people who live their lives in sin, but somehow they are of the thought that, look, I'll go to church occasionally. I'll even put something in the collection basket, and that will make everything right, and God will be pleased with me. No. Just as Israel of old, their sacrifices were not pleasing unto him. In fact, he says their sacrifices will be like the bread of mourners to them. All who eat it shall be defiled. For their bread shall be for their own life. It shall not come into the house of the Lord. When it came to giving tithes, they were to tithe a tenth of what they had. And those tithes were collected, one tithe in particular, was collected in order to provide for the traveler, for the poor, for the orphan, and for the widow. But there was one category that the tithe could not be used to provide for. And that would be for those who were in the midst of mourning a loss. If they were grieving, if they were in that period of mourning the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, if death had touched that house, then tithes at that time could not be provided for that family. They could before, they could again afterwards. And of course, provision for the family could be made then, just as it is now, with friends and neighbors, carrying them food if it's necessary, carrying them what is needful. But the tithes, the holy food that had been given to God to accommodate God's purposes, to do so would defile it. To do so would render it unclean. God would not accept it. Matter of fact, if you go to the book of Deuteronomy, this is chapter 26 of Deuteronomy. The priest or the Levite who was in charge of distributing these tithes out to the poor, to the needy, to the Levites, to the priest. As he was doing this, there was a pledge that he was required to make before God. And that pledge would be, number one, I have not eaten thereof in my mourning. The priest himself, the Levite himself, who is distributing these tithes, and remember, one of the prime purposes of the tithes was to provide for the priests and the Levites, but not during their time of mourning. Not during the time that there was a dead body. Not during the time that they were taking care of the funeral and mourning thereafter. No, I have not eaten thereof in my mourning, not even himself. He goes on to say, neither have I taken away aught thereof for any unclean use. But he finishes it out, nor have I given aught for the dead. Not even for those who were grieving, not even for those who were mourning, not even for those whose homes had been rendered with sorrow because of the death of a loved one. That was not the purpose of the tithes. Again, charity from friends, charity from neighbors. But the holy tithes of God could not be associated with the death. And so they were not given to those who were in their period of mourning. God says that's the way your sacrifices will be to me. They won't be holy. They will be defiled when you give them to me, just as if you were to offer bread to those who were mourning, offer the holy bread, the bread that had been tithed to those who were mourning. It would defile all that they touch. And on top of that, he wants to know, well, what are you going to do in the appointed day, verse 5? And in the day of the feast of the Lord, for indeed they are gone because of destruction. He says in the first place, what you offer is going to be unclean. You think you're going to make it up by making a few token offerings, paying a few token tithes? Don't you understand what you offer is unclean? In fact, the place that you would offer it is now gone. When Assyria takes that land, they would move the people out of the land. The altars that they use, they've either been torn down, they have been destroyed, they've been confiscated if there was anything of value in them. The places where you would offer are gone. And if we're talking about the true worship of God in the temple in Jerusalem, offered by the true priest of God, that's now cut off from you. And for the northern kingdom of Israel, it has now been cut off forever. It is now unattainable. And then finally here, the ones who would offer it for you, the priests, the Levites, you're separated from them. The false priests that Jeroboam, the false priests of the heathen nations round about them, they've also been carried off into captivity in Assyria. There's no one to offer. And again, you are cut off from the true worship of God in the city of Jerusalem, in that temple that Solomon had built. The one who offers it for you is now gone. What will you do in the appointed day and in the day of the feast of the Lord? For indeed they are gone because of destruction. He says, Egypt shall gather them up. Memphis shall bury them. That's what's going to happen to those who are fleeing from Assyria, fleeing down to the south. Egypt will gather them up. Memphis had been a capital city in the nation of Egypt at this time that Hosea writes. It's still a very prominent and very powerful city. Memphis shall bury them. And what shall their estate be reduced to? He says, nettles shall possess their valuables of silver. thorns shall be their tents. They're going to be destitute, like Gomer was after she finally left Hosea, after her prostitution could no longer provide for her or give her sustenance. No, their valuables of silver, nettles shall possess them. Thorns shall be their tents. Why? Verse 7, he wants to make it abundantly clear. Because the days of punishment have come. The days of recompense have come. It's not are coming. It's not will come. Hosea wants them to know the days are here. The days of punishment has come. And he points out here quite clearly, Israel knows. In every generation, they had been warned of the need to be faithful to God. In every generation, they had been encouraged to be loyal to the covenant and to the God who loved them. They couldn't plead ignorance to this. Israel knows that the days of recompense were to come, that God would indeed punish their disobedience. And how is it then that those who should have been their saviors, those who should have been teaching them the truth, Israel says the prophet's a fool, and the spiritual man is indeed, because of the greatness of your iniquity and great enmity. How was it then they viewed a prophet? How was it then that they viewed a man who really was spiritually minded, who really was interested in obeying God? He says the prophet's a fool, and the message that he preaches is nothing but foolishness. He says the spiritual man, the man who's trying to do what God would have him to do, that man's crazy. He's insane. He's doing something that makes no sense. He says that is because of the greatness of your iniquity. You can't see straight. You can't think straight. You see the prophet, you think he's a fool. You see the spiritual man, and you think that he's crazy because of your iniquity and the great enmity, the bitterness, the ill feeling that you have toward your God. He goes on then in verse 8 to point out that the watchman of Ephraim is with my God. That would be like Hosea and others like, say, Micah and Elijah and Isaiah. Those who had pointed out that the time was coming, that they could see the enemy on the horizon. They would give God's warning of what was coming, of what was to come to pass. The watchman of Ephraim, he is with my God. But the prophet, and apparently here he has reference to the false prophets of the gods that Jeroboam created, or the gods of the lands round about them. The prophet is a fowler snare in all of his ways. He doesn't offer illumination. He doesn't offer freedom. He doesn't offer salvation. All he is a snare and a trap. He will build you down instead of bringing you closer to God. That prophet is enmity in the house of God. He says, verse 9, they are deeply corrupted as the days of Gibeah. Gibeah was a village in the tribe of Benjamin. And the only thing that really causes it to stand out in the history of Israel is something that happened during the period of the Judges. The exact thing that we're talking about will be found in Judges chapter 19, verses 22 through 30. The entire story will take you all the way through chapters 20 and 21, indeed through the end of the book of Judges. It was an event of extreme wickedness. We see the sin of Sodom. It comes to visit in Israel. And not only do we see it rear its ugly head, we also encounter the violation, the abuse, and the murder of an innocent woman. And the repercussions of that is a vengeance that is so terrible, so great, that it almost leads to the extinction, not just of the city of Gibeah, but of the entirety of the tribe of Benjamin. It was a great wickedness indeed, and I would encourage you to go to the book of Judges, to look at it, to study it, to see what it was that would cause Hosea here to use it in reference to the sin of the people, that they have deeply corrupted themselves, as in the days of Gibeah. He goes on then, the latter part of verse 9, to say, therefore he, that is God, will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. Don't think you will escape. Don't think you will appease. Don't think there is some way to excuse or to get around the judgment of God. He will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. Verse 10, the tone changes, as it seems God is taking a little trip down memory lane, as he thinks about how it was in the beginning, when Israel was still yet tender and innocent. He says, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruits of the fig tree in its first season. I want you, if you can, to imagine yourself traveling the roads of Israel back during Hosea's time. They are, of course, dirt roads. They're dirty. They're dusty. It is a land where it is hot. And if it's during the dry season, it is extremely hot and extremely dry. If you're carrying provisions for your journey, most likely it is bread, it is grain, and it is perhaps dried fruit, maybe some dried meat. And then as you're traveling along, guess what you come across? You come across a wild grapevine, which is full of luscious and juicy grapes. And oh, what a treasure it is. It is something unexpected, something that just warms your heart. It just makes your day. It is a treasure found in the wilderness. God says that's how it was in those early days. It was like finding this beautiful bounty out in the wilderness. He also goes on to use the illustration of a farmer who has gone to all the trouble to plant a tree, to fertilize that tree, to take care of it for the years, for the time that it would take for that tree to reach a maturity. And when it finally does, and in that first season, when that fig tree bears its fruits, all the joy as the husbandman, as the farmer begins to see the rewards of his labor. That's how God said, I saw your forefathers. That's how I saw the generations before you. They were like a tree I had worked on that is now finally producing fruit. But sometimes that is the most frightening word in the English language, the word but. Because you were that way. But they went to Baal Peor, separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing that they loved. Baal Peor. Again, we have to go back a little farther in the history of these people. And this was at the end of their journeys in the wilderness. They are in the plains of Moab. They are on the bank of the Jordan River. This is the last place they will be before they cross over into that promised land. Indeed, on the other side of the river, the city of Jericho, the first place that they will take, the first place that they will seize when they enter into the promised land. But while they're on the plains of Moab, while they're in Acacia Grove, and this is Numbers chapter 25 and the first 3 verses, we read that Israel remained in Acacia Grove and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. They invited them to the feast of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal of Peor. This was something that was so horrendous. This was something that was so awful. Think about this. They have just finished 40 years of God providing for them in the wilderness. And on the journey, on these last times, they have overthrown kings. They have defeated armies that have come against them, not to take land at this time, but to reach the border, to reach the land that God had promised them. And yet here on the very cusp of receiving that promised land, Israel joins themselves to Baal of Peor. 24,000 people died because of the sins of Israel that day. No, they separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing that they loved. Verse 11, as for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird. Israel, Ephraim, they think that they are noble. They think they are glorious. They think they have it made. God says it'll be just as fleet as a bird, just as fleeting as a bird. For a bird is here and then it picks up and it flies off, and it may be heading to another place. It may be migrating, but your glory is as transitory as the presence of a bird. No birth, no pregnancy, no conception. That sounds harsh. Anything they might glory in, the continuation of the nation, there will be no birth, there'll be no pregnancy, there'll be no conception. Again, as many people seem to overlook, when Israel is taken away, they as a nation will never return. There would never again be another kingdom of Israel. Now, what we have over in the Middle East now, that's not the kingdom of Israel. We'll get into that perhaps in another lesson. But there will never be another kingdom of Israel. Later, Judah would be able to return from Babylon, and Judah would become Judea. And of course, the peoples of these northern 10 tribes who were desirous, they could return to that land. But the kingdom of Israel, it would never be seen again. No birth, no pregnancy, no conception. There would be nothing that would allow for the continuance of that kingdom and of that nation. He says, verse 12, though they bring up their children, yet I'll bereave them to the last man. God has determined that this nation is doomed. They shall not continue. They have abandoned their God. They've taken every opportunity to break his covenant. I will bereave them to the last man. The latter part of verse 12, yes, woe to them when I depart from them. They do not realize, as Gomer with Hosea, she never realized that Hosea was actually the source of the blessings, of the sustenance that she received. Well, same with Israel. They never really truly realized that God was the source of their blessings. When he departs, woe to them indeed. Verse 13, just as I saw Ephraim like Tyre planted in a pleasant place, so Ephraim will bring out his children to the murderer. They were given a pleasant place, a productive place, a land that flows with milk and honey, a most desirable place. But their own decisions, their own choices, the consequences of that will be the destruction of their own children. It will be as if they had with their own hands taken their children out to give them to the murderers. They have deprived their children of their future because of their own sin, because of their own selfishness. And so, from the verse that we were looking at to begin with as we began this lesson, give them, O Lord, what will you give? What is it that Hosea would ask God to give to such a people? To those who, because of their sin, because of their selfishness, their stubborn refusal to obey God, what would you give to them? Hosea asked, God, you give them a miscarrying womb and dry breast. This is a nation that does not deserve to continue. This is a nation that does not deserve the blessings that God has put upon it. This is a nation that is indeed doomed. Verse 15, he says, all their wickedness is in Gilgal, for there I hated them. And isn't that a rough word? I hated them. And again, a little trip down memory lane as we look at Gilgal. Gilgal was the place that Israel first camped when they crossed over the Jordan River into the Promised Land. That was their headquarters that they operated from for the conquest of the land. It was their first camp. It was the place where the covenant was renewed. Their first Passover in the Promised Land of God was held at Gilgal. And that's the place that the temple, or the tabernacle, made its home during the period of the conquest. During whatever time it took until it was moved to someplace else, the tabernacle was at home in Gilgal. It was the first time there was a semi-permanent place for the temple that God had ordained for his people to meet with him there. Gilgal. It had become a place of wickedness. It had become a place of idolatrous worship. It had become a place for the practice of the heathen and for the idolater. He says, because of the evil of their deeds, I'll drive them from my house. Remember, the tabernacle had been the Gilgal had been the home of the tabernacle. I'll drive them from my house. God says, I am not going to tolerate them anymore. I've put up with it long enough. He says, I will love them no more. There are many sad statements in the Bible. There are many sad pronouncements. This would rank as one of the worst. When God takes those that he had loved, God takes those that he had brought up, he had protected, he had nurtured, and God says, I will love them no more. All their princes are rebellious. Ephraim is stricken, their root is dried up, they'll bear no fruit. He's going back to this idea here of the punishment, of the sorrow that will take them as the nation is allowed to wither away. Their root is dried up. They shall bear no fruit. Indeed, he goes on to say, yes, if they were to bear children, I would kill the darlings of their womb. Here again, talking about the nation, not necessarily the individual families, but as the nation. That nation will bear no more fruit. Even if it were to have children, God says, I'll kill the darlings of their womb. The time for repentance is past. The time for judgment has come. He says, verse 17, my God will cast them away because they did not obey him, and they shall be wanderers among the nation. That last phrase, they shall be wanderers among the nations. Again, as we saw about Egypt, God has a way of saying exactly what he means. If we were again to take a trip back in time, say to the land of Palestine during the time that Jesus lived and worked and taught and preached on this earth. In the land of Palestine, historians tell us there were about 700,000 Jews who lived in the land of Palestine during the time of Christ. But there were 3 million Jews who lived outside the land of Palestine during the time of Christ. If we look in the 20th century, say in 1939, this was before the creation of the modern nation of Israel, that number of 700,000 had dropped to 450,000. There were 450,000 Jews who were living in the land of Palestine in 1939. Historians tell us that during that same time, there were 16,150,000 Jews who lived outside the land of Palestine in 1939. And even if we were to look at it today, though there has been the creation of a so-called land of Israel, and though immigration to that land has been strongly encouraged and has been much taken up, today, as of September of this year, 7,760,000 people, according to those who keep up with such numbers, now dwell in the land called Israel. And though that number is very close, there's still 8 million who live outside the land of Israel as of September of 2025. Were they wanderers among the nations? Yes, they were. They had been driven from their land, and for all of history from that time, their home has been somewhere else. They have wandered the world because, again, that kingdom shall never come again. And with that, we reach the conclusion of chapter 9 of the book of Hosea. If you would be interested in increasing your own knowledge of the Bible, we have several resources that we would be happy to make available to you without charge and without obligation. Whether it's an in-home Bible study, or a digital or online Bible study, or a correspondence course, a study by mail. If you'd be interested in any of these ways of studying, please contact us at Bible Class 4255 Gore Subligna Road, Summerville, Georgia 30747, or email us at todaysbibleclass@gmail.com. You can also leave a text message at 706-290-4329.